Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Speletons. I'm Zinker. He's Derek. We're arguing about SpongeBob Super Bowl mayhem.
Yeah. I'm just trying to be the voice of reason here.
Derek. Derek, let me tell you something, buddy. Don't even start the voice of reason, mister. I think you probably think SpongeBob's the bad guy here. Not the people who want SpongeBob. You think SpongeBob himself is the bad guy.
You know who I think the bad guys are here? I think it's the people who wrote the clickbait articles.
They are bad guys. I do agree.
They are the bad. I think they are. I believe they are the sole bad guys in this situation. Also, whoever wrote the song that came after the Sweet Victory Horns, because that song just sounded awful.
What? Oh, and Sicko. Yeah.
That's all. They're also the bad guy, not because they were after Sweet Victory, just because it just sounded bad.
Yeah. Next one.
I don't care about my music now. So the other point I want to make, I'm not even gonna I think I'm just gonna say we should just agree to disagree for the first point on the viewers and whatnot, because I don't think we're not going to, at no point are either of us going to change our mind.
Right. Well, yeah, you're not gonna change your mind. There's no agree to disagree. It is one way. It's my way, according to the highway. Way's dumb.
Anyways, so the other point I wanted to make, which is why I think that this was overall, while I'm sad that we didn't get more, I think what we got is still a very good thing, and I think it was intended I think it was intended to honor the petition.
Well,
the halftime show is like 13-14 minutes, I believe. The clip I saw was for the halftime show was short. It's I don't know how long the halftime show actually is. But it's not that long, and they do put in a lot of stuff throughout it. So I think expecting the full song is just ridiculous, and anyone who thought they were going to get the full song just doesn't know how the halftime show works.
No, I disagree. I think we can get it there. I think you're too pessimistic on this. I think we can get the full song on the halftime
Zinker,
show.
they don't do the full song for most any song, even ones that are mainstream.
Yeah, but the full song to everyone is like a minute.
The full song to yes.
The actual song is like 2.5 minutes.
Song.
I'm aiming for a minute.
Yes.
Maybe not. Whatever. Just to the first bass drop where everyone's holding the candles. Probably. I don't remember the song. Yeah. I could give you a timestamp once I remember the song. But which means I'll have to go listen to it.
So anyways, I will preface this by saying I have not gone back to look at previous Super Bowls to confirm this, but based off my knowledge of watching previous Super Bowls, I think this is the first time that what I'm going to continually refer to as nerd culture, this is the first time that nerd culture has had any sort of representation at a Super Bowl halftime show, which I think a very
Why do you think
big,
SpongeBob's
kind of
nerd
big deal.
culture, dude? What are you talking about?
I don't think it's nerd culture. Okay, SpongeBob is a very well. I will say SpongeBob is well known. SpongeBob is I believe he's a Macy's Day Parade float every year. He is.
Derek, I'm just
well
concerned
known
for you, buddy. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. Keep going.
Yes. Yes, I will say he does have some knowledge, or he does have some renown. I don't think most people don't care about him as much, though. Most people, I think, most people, I think, do not care about them to the extent where they would want because I would say if they played the full show, or if they played the full song, I would say 100% call that them memeing. People do not care. I think not that many people care about meme culture that much, or at least SpongeBob for meme culture. People, I think. people care more about people would care more. I think there are more people in the U.S. that care about Family Guy memes than there are that care about SpongeBob memes. Let me put it that way.
I disagree.
Okay. I'm not gonna argue it because I'm not gonna argue it. I disagree.
To be fair,
but I'm
that
not
is
gonna
the right
argue
call, but still.
Also, I just want to point out, so far, I believe you have agreed with every point I made except who the bad guys are.
To be fair, though, I don't even believe that's who you think the bad guys are. I still think you think it's someone who's actually a good guy here. I feel like you think the mailman's the bad guy in this situation. That's an on par thing for Derek. The mailman's the bad guy.
So,
how's the mailman the bad guy? I don't know. But that...
So, the way I look at this is one of the... I would say that including Sweet Victory in this would be a acknowledgement of nerd culture, especially because even if people know about SpongeBob, they probably most people who know about it, I think a lot of people who know what SpongeBob is have watched very little or to none.
I'm so worried for you. I'm not even kidding. That above all else.
I think you are
honestly.
I think you are too removed from normie culture outside of people our age.
Outside. Well, yeah, I know, like, people over, like,
outside of our age
specifically,
like,
obsessing over SpongeBob. I am aware of that.
Yes, and neither are people
it's a
under 20.
representation of nerd culture. I don't know what you're talking about. That's nerd culture would still be for us. Like, it would still be for our age range at best.
How about this? Let me put it this way. It's a representation of internet culture.
Okay, I can accept that. That makes sense.
I would say them playing it is a representation of internet culture, which I think in mainstream media is still a very underrepresented like group. Popular music is not part of internet culture in the slightest. That's a completely different culture. That's a completely different thing. Internet culture is a very recent thing to come about. It's I think I would say internet culture like really started to come about in the early 2000s. It started to come about in the early 2000s. It hasn't been around that long. It's only been around for 18, 19 years at this point, at most.
Right.
And the inclusion of internet culture into mainstream media has been a very slow thing coming. It's because before the internet, when you think about what people had for entertainment, which is you had music, you had television, and television is just a purveyor of media, really. So it kind of goes along with it, but you had television, you had movies, and you had and outside of that, really, you had live events for for entertainment, besides obviously there's obviously stuff like crosswords, or that's what people did to pass the time before the internet, but
yes, just crosswords and nothing else.
But just
got
crosswords. That was all you had.
There was only crosswords in the olden days.
But
back in my day, there was just crosswords.
But since the internet's been brought about, really, though, within the last 18 years or so, and obviously the internet existed before that, but it wasn't it was mostly used for business and porn, and that was it. With the rise of social media and memes and internet culture and things that people do on the internet, I still don't anytime I'm home and I watch just regular people television, I still don't really see a lot of that culture being included. What I see from that culture is you see things like The Big Bang Theory, which is a horrible, inaccurate representation of what that culture is comprised of. That's a stereotype of what people think it's comprised of, which is where I get the idea that most people are in fact removed from the idea of what nerd culture is. There's stuff like I see on Jimmy Fallon a lot. This is something that really bothers me on Jimmy Fallon is every so often he will do a segment which is This Week in Memes, where he will take photos from like news conferences or stuff like that, or like news coverage, like photos of like Trump or like whoever's in the news this week, and then like attach a meme to it. The problem I have with that is it's so far removed from meme culture because the memes that he uses are so out of date.
Right.
He frequently uses the Irma Gerd meme.
Okay.
Or like in stuff like that, or older.
Are you sure
meme
you're
like
now?
That text.
It's not that I doubt you on this. But I just want to double check and make sure. Are you sure?
Yeah.
You're watching a recent episode of Jimmy Fallon?
Yes, because I know it for sure because of what's in the news.
Okay.
What's being used in the memes.
All right. Just wanted to double check, just in case that was something you didn't.
It doesn't feel like it, but it is. It's painful to watch. As someone who loves memes, it's very painful to watch.
Talk show host for you.
Yes. I think what that is that's not them. That is just I would like to think Jimmy knows that they're old memes. But I feel like that's more the studio capitalizing on the fact that people, like a lot of people who watch the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon are people who are. I don't think it's as many people that are like our age really. It's more people that are like my parents' age or so. And while they don't know much about the internet at all, they might scroll past like shitty memes and see the meme text. So like, I think it's just like the studio, like probably the executives like kind of like forcing on or like capitalizing on the the fact that most of their demographic probably does not know meme culture or internet culture really. But the point I was originally making was I think that the inclusion of SpongeBob in the Super Bowl halftime show at all is a sort of a like step towards more inclusion of like internet culture in big or well-known or like mainstream like events or media like this.
I feel like it's just a shitty way to capitalize and get people to listen to Sicko Mode, which no one wanted to. I stand by that.
And yes, even if it was. I honestly I don't know if it was I don't know if it was or wasn't. I really don't like have I'm not sure which, or like I'd have to like learn. I probably have to like I'd probably need to know a little bit more exactly to be able to decide whether or not I think it was or not. Or at least like rewatch it a couple times or something. Even if it was, I think it's not the best way to like sort of introduce the culture to something like this. I still think it is a good step towards moving forward in like sort of like progressing media really, or what's like mainstream, because it feels like by now. So and I this is something I think about a lot too. What's TV gonna look like in like 10-20 years when people who grew our age, or people who like grew up like, or like at least like when they were in like their like teenage to like adult years, were like heavily involved in like the internet and memes. And like if you look at how like if I go to college and just like if I go to like RT and just like talk to people, the language I use, the way I go about talking to people is very different than how I talk to like people like my parents, or people who aren't from this like our generation, or who didn't like grow up with this. I'm very interested to see like how internet culture sort of like people who grew up like with the internet and internet culture like sort of are going to affect media as things are as like times progress and like generations sort of like shift. And like basically like in like 10 or 20 years, when people are who are currently our age are like kind of like running stuff like that, or like the main talent or main writers for stuff. Like a good example I think would be like Saturday Night Live. If you ever watch like some of their more recent skits, or every so often on Saturday Night Live, I'll see skits where it seems like they're clearly just trying to, they don't exactly, like the writers don't exactly know how people our age are. So a good example I think would be there was a skit called, I don't know what it was called, but I would if I had to name it, I would just name it Boo Boo Jeffries.
What?
I don't know if I ever sent it to you. I should though. It is a good skit. I'm entertained by it.
I don't know where this conversation has gone. Are we talking about the Super Bowl? How did we get to Boo Boo Jeffries? I zoned out for 2 seconds there. What happened?
So, I sort of like transitioned from talking about the Super Bowl to continuing my discussion on how I think, or how internet culture is going to sort of like change media very soon, probably, and somewhat dramatically too. I think this is like the start of that. I think SpongeBob being in this is sort of like the start of internet culture starting to affect more of mainstream media. That's the short version. The long version is me talking about a Saturday Night Live skit and how I think and how it's not an accurate portrayal of internet culture, although it attempted to be, and how in the next like few years or so, when people like our age are getting cycled into the cast of Saturday Night Live, because they cycle their cast in and out frequently, how and the writers as well, how they might start to change towards more like doing stuff more about like memes or stuff that interests people our age, besides just like popular shows, Breaking Bad or stuff like that, which I think are also very normie things. They're to like enjoy, and it's outside what I call normie culture too. But
I don't know where. All right, next time, Speletons.
I figured you lost me somewhere.
Bye bye.